The rain had finally stopped, leaving Lagos roads slick and glistening under the orange streetlights. Emeka wiped the condensation from his windscreen with an old rag, squinting at the clock on his dashboard, 11:47 p.m. He should have gone home hours ago, but December was expensive, his son's school fees were due, and his wife needed money for Christmas provisions. He was parked near the third mainland bridge, debating whether to call it a night, when he saw her. She stood under a flickering streetlight on the bridge, dressed in a fancy white lace dress, her head wrapped neat and elegant. She raised her hand, and something about her stillness made Emeka hesitate. But business was business. He pulled over, and she climbed into the back seat with barely a sound. The interior light revealed her face, beautiful, serene, with dark eyes that seemed to look through him rather than at him. "Good evening, Ma," Emeka said, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Where to?" "Ikoyi Cemetery," she replied softly, her voice echoing like a whisper. "At this hour?" "Yes. I need to say goodbye to someone." She folded her hands in her lap, perfectly composed. "I'll pay you double your usual fare." The promise of extra money silenced his objections. Times were hard, and he'd driven stranger passengers to stranger places. He pulled back onto the road, the bridge stretching endlessly ahead. "You have family there?" Emeka asked, trying to fill the uncomfortable silence. "Yes, my mother." Her tone was distant, sad. "Sorry for your loss, Ma." She didn't respond, and Emeka let the silence settle. The road was nearly empty, just the occasional Danfo bus rumbling past and the distant glow of Victoria Island's towers. He glanced in the mirror again. She sat perfectly still, hands folded, eyes fixed on something he couldn't see. The air felt strange and chilly in the car, even with the humid Lagos night outside. Emeka glanced back. "Ma, are you cold? Should I turn off the AC?" "No, I'm fine." But she definitely wasn't okay. Her skin was strangely pale, and her dress was way too dry for someone who just walked in the rain. No moisture anywhere. Emeka's mouth went dry. Every Lagos driver knew the tales of ghost passengers who flagged down taxis at night. He'd always thought they were just scary stories. But now, with this woman in his back seat, those stories didn't seem so far-fetched anymore. "Ma, excuse me, but where exactly were you coming from?" "I was visiting," she said simply. "Old friends." "On the bridge, at midnight, in the rain?" "What friends?" The third mainland bridge was 11 kilometers of concrete and water. There were no houses, no compounds, just the endless stretch of road suspended over the Lagos Lagoon. "Ma, forgive me, but there's nothing on that part of the bridge. Just the road." "I know where I was," she replied, her voice carrying a finality that discouraged further questions. They drove in silence through Oberland, past the sleeping market stalls and locked shops. The streets grew quieter as they approached Ikoyi, the upscale neighborhood where old money and new money collided. Emeka found himself checking the rearview mirror every few seconds, unable to shake the feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with his passenger. Her chest didn't rise and fall. She never shifted position, never adjusted her dress or touched her head wrap. She simply sat, perfectly still, like a photograph come to life, or like a corpse posed in a chair. Emeka's heart began to hammer against his ribs. "Sweet Jesus," he prayed silently, "protect me tonight." The cemetery sat on a quiet stretch of road, surrounded by high walls and guarded by iron gates that looked imposing even in darkness. Emeka pulled up to the gates and turned in his seat, his breath catching in his throat. She reached into a small purse he hadn't noticed before and pulled out a wad of crisp Naira notes, far more than double his usual fare. She placed them on the seat beside her. "Thank you for bringing me home." "Home?" Emeka's heart began to pound so hard he thought it might burst through his chest. "Ma, what do you mean?" It was the smile of someone who had already left this world, a smile with no warmth behind it, only infinite sadness and resignation. "Tell them Funmaleo came back. Tell them I needed to see my mother one last time before I could rest." "My funeral was this afternoon," she said calmly, as if discussing the weather. "At Holy Cross Cathedral, Ibiut Meta. They buried me here at 4 p.m. But I wasn't ready. I had to say goodbye to my mother first. She died 5 years ago, and I never made peace with it." Emeka's mouth went dry. His hands trembled on the steering wheel, and a cold sweat broke out across his forehead despite the chill in the car. "This is not funny, Ma. Please, if this is a joke, look at me," she commanded softly. He did. And this time, he truly saw her. The way the streetlight seemed to shine through her rather than on her. The complete absence of breath, of the subtle movements that marked the living. The flutter of eyelids, the twitch of muscles, the pulse of blood beneath skin. Funmaleo Adebayo, she said. 29 years old. My family buried me today, but my spirit couldn't rest. I needed to come here, to my mother's grave, to tell her I forgive her for leaving me. Emeka wanted to scream, to run, to throw himself from the car and flee into the night. But terror had frozen him in place, turned his muscles to stone and his blood to ice. His breath came in short, sharp gasps, and dark spots danced at the edges of his vision. Don't be afraid, Funmaleo said gently, and there was genuine compassion in her voice. I meant you no harm. You were kind to me. You picked me up when others might have driven past. Keep the money. Use it for your son's school fees. Tund, isn't it? That's his name. He hadn't mentioned his son's name. He was certain of it. He'd said nothing about Tund, nothing about his family, nothing personal at all. How do you? His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. The living and the dead aren't as separate as you think, she said, her dark eyes holding secrets Emeka couldn't begin to comprehend. The veil between our worlds is thin, thinner than your pastors and imams would have you believe. We see you. We hear your prayers and worries. She reached for the door, and Emeka realized she had no shadow. The streetlight behind her should have thrown her silhouette across the car's interior. But there was nothing, just empty space where darkness should have been. Give your family an extra hug tomorrow. Tell them you love them. Life is shorter than anyone believes. Her voice grew softer, more distant, as if she were already fading. I learned that too late. Don't make my mistake, Emeka. Don't wait to say the things that matter. Who told you my name? He whispered, though he already knew the answer would offer no comfort. She smiled again, that heartbreaking smile of infinite sadness. The dead know many things. We have time, all the time in the world, to watch, to listen, to learn. We see the regrets that will haunt you before you even make them. For a moment, she stood there, looking back at him with those deep, sad eyes that seemed to hold all the sorrow of the world. Thank you, Emeka, for seeing me, for treating me like I was still human. She paused, and a single tear rolled down her translucent cheek. You don't know how rare that is. Most people look through us, not at us. They sense something wrong and they turn away, afraid to acknowledge what their hearts already know. Emeka found his voice, though it came out as barely a croak. Will you find peace now? I hope so, she said softly. I've been wandering since Wednesday, caught between worlds, unable to move forward because of unfinished business. But tonight, with your help, I'll finally reach my mother's grave. I'll tell her what I should have told her 5 years ago. Maybe then I can rest. What will you tell her? Emeka asked, surprised by his own curiosity, by the way his terror was slowly giving way to something else. Compassion, perhaps, or a strange kinship with this lost soul. That I forgive her. That I understand now why she did what she did. That depression is a demon that devours from within, and she fought it as long as she could. Funmaleo's voice broke slightly. That I love her. That I'm sorry I wasn't enough to make her want to stay. I'm sure you were enough, Emeka said, and he meant it. Sometimes the darkness is just too strong. She nodded, grateful. Thank you for that. God bless you and your family, Emeka. May you never know the regret that has haunted me these 5 years. May you always say, I love you, while there's still time to say it. Then she turned and walked toward the cemetery gates. Not through them. Emeka watched, heart hammering, as she simply passed through the iron bars like smoke through a screen, like morning mist dissipating in sunlight. One moment she was there, solid and real, and the next she was simply gone, absorbed into the darkness beyond the gates. He sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, unable to move, unable to think, unable to process what he had just witnessed. The money she'd left sat on the back seat, crisp and real and impossible. His hands shook so badly he could barely grip the steering wheel. Finally, his survival instinct kicked in. He grabbed the money. It felt real, solid, undeniably physical. He didn't look back. He couldn't. A ghost was with her mother, and Emeka just wanted to be far away from that. A soft glow flickered among the tombstones. 2 figures, mother and daughter, finally embraced. Then, just like that, the light vanished. Emeka didn't go home that night. He couldn't. The thought of lying in bed next to his wife Folake, pretending everything was normal, felt impossible. How could he close his eyes when every time he did, he saw Funmaleo's translucent face, her sad smile, her figure passing through solid iron like it was air? Instead, he drove aimlessly through Lagos's empty streets, wrestling with what he'd seen. The city looked different now. Every shadow held potential menace. Every pedestrian might be something other than human. Had it been real? A hallucination? Had someone spiked his drink at the buka where he'd eaten dinner? But no drug could create such vivid, consistent detail. No fever dream could leave behind 60,000 naira in crisp bills. He found himself on the highway, heading nowhere in particular, just moving because staying still felt dangerous. The sky began to lighten, that peculiar gray-blue that came before true dawn, when the night was dying but the day hadn't yet been born. In that liminal hour, Emeka felt caught between worlds himself, no longer certain where the boundary between the living and the dead truly lay. By dawn, he found himself parked outside an all-night cafe in Yaba, drinking terrible coffee and trying to make sense of the impossible. The morning shift workers were beginning to fill the streets. Market women with loads balanced on their heads, Okada riders revving their engines, laborers heading to construction sites. Except nothing would ever be normal again. Emeka stared at his hands, half expecting to see through them, to find himself fading like Funmaleo. But his hands remained solid, flesh and blood and bone. He was alive. He was real. But he'd touched the other side, had conversed with death itself, and the experience had changed something fundamental in him. "You look like you've seen a ghost, brother," the cafe owner said, refilling his cup with the dark, bitter brew. His name tag read Cunnel, and he had the weathered face of a man who'd worked nights for too many years. Emeka laughed, a sharp, slightly hysterical sound that made Cunnel take a step back. "You don't know the half of it. Try me. I've worked this shift for 15 years. You'd be surprised what people tell me at 5 a.m. But Emeka couldn't. Not yet. The experience was too raw, too unbelievable. Instead, he asked, "Do you believe in ghosts?" Cunnel's expression grew serious. He glanced around the empty cafe, then pulled up a chair. "This is Lagos, brother. Of course I believe. I've seen things, heard things. You work nights long enough. You learn the city has two faces, the one people see in daylight, and the one that comes out after dark." "What kind of things?" "A woman in white who walks Ikorodu Road every full moon, looking for the son who died in a bus accident. A man who asks for directions to a house that burned down 20 years ago. Passengers who pay with money that turns to leaves by morning." Cunnel's voice dropped to a whisper. "Last month, a driver came in here crying. Said he'd picked up a family, mother, father, 2 children, near Lekki. Drove them to a compound in Aja. When he turned to collect his fare, the back seat was empty. He asked the security guard who lived at that address. You know what the guard told him?" Emeka shook his head, his coffee forgotten. "That family died in a home invasion 5 years ago, murdered in their beds. Sometimes they're seen trying to go home, still not understanding they're dead." A chill ran down Emeka's spine. Why doesn't anyone talk about this? Why isn't it in the news? Cunnel shrugged. Who would believe it? They'd say you're mad, that you smoke Igbo, that you're trying to get attention. So drivers keep quiet. They tell their stories to people like me at places like this, and we nod and refill their coffee, because we know. We've seen it too. When the sun was fully up, Emeka made a decision. He had to know if Funmaleo had been telling the truth. He had to know if he'd really transported a ghost, or if he was losing his mind. Because if it was real, if the dead truly walked among the living, then everything he thought he knew about the world was wrong. He drove to Abute Meta, to Holy Cross Cathedral. The church sat on a busy street, its white walls gleaming in the morning light, a massive crucifix mounted above the entrance. Market women had set up stalls along the sidewalk, selling fruits and vegetables and fried akara. The smell of palm oil and pepper filled the air. It was aggressively, beautifully normal, the kind of scene Emeka had witnessed 1,000 times without truly seeing it. Now, after his encounter with the dead, he saw it differently. Each person had a glow, a vitality that Funmaleo had lacked. They moved with the unconscious grace of the living, never perfectly still, always shifting, breathing, existing in the flow of time. Emeka parked and approached the gate, where an elderly security guard sat on a wooden stool, reading a newspaper. The man looked up, his weathered face creasing with curiosity. "Good morning, sir," Emeka said, his voice hoarse from sleeplessness and too much bad coffee. "Please, did you have a funeral here yesterday?" A young woman. The guard's face grew somber. He carefully folded his newspaper and set it aside. "Ah, yes. Very sad. Funmaleo Adebayo. Beautiful girl, only 29. Car accident on the bridge, died on the spot. Crashed into the barrier at high speed. They said she died instantly, at least. No suffering." The world tilted. Emeka grabbed the fence to steady himself, his vision swimming. It was true. All of it was true. "Are you all right?" the guard asked, rising from his stool with concern. "You look like you're about to faint. Should I get you some water?" "No, I'm fine." Emeka took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. "The funeral, what time did it end?" "Around 3 p.m. They took her to Ikoyi Cemetery after. Her mother is buried there, so the family wanted them together." The guard shook his head sadly, pulling a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his eyes. "The mother died 5 years ago, you know. Jumped from the 5th floor of a building in Surulere. Depression, they said. Funmaleo found her body." Emeka felt sick. Every detail matched. Every single detail that Funmaleo had told him was accurate. The timing, the location, the mother's death, everything. They said Funmaleo never got over it. The guard continued, warming to his story now. Blamed herself. Became obsessed with mental health advocacy, trying to save others from her mother's fate. But she carried the guilt like a stone around her neck. "Her father told me. He's a good man. Been coming to this church for 30 years. That Funmaleo had nightmares every night. Dreams where her mother was falling, and Funmaleo was reaching out, but could never catch her. That's terrible. The saddest part." The guard leaned closer, his voice dropping. The day before the accident, Funmaleo had called her father. Told him she was finally ready to let go of the guilt. Said she'd forgiven her mother, forgiven herself. Was going to visit the grave that evening to say a proper goodbye. But she never made it. Because she died on the bridge. Emeka whispered, his throat tight. Exactly at the same spot where her mother had jumped 5 years earlier. The bridge, you see, she'd jumped from the 3rd mainland bridge. That's where they found her body, in the lagoon below. The guard's eyes were distant, seeing something Emeka couldn't. Some people say there are no coincidences in this world. That the same place that took the mother called to the daughter. "Why are you asking?" the guard said, studying Emeka with new interest. "Did you know her?" Emeka hesitated. How much should he reveal? Would this man believe him? Or would he call for help? Have Emeka committed to a psychiatric hospital? But looking into the guard's weathered face, seeing the kindness and wisdom there, Emeka decided to trust him. I drove her last night." The guard's eyes widened, but he didn't scoff or laugh. "What?" "I picked her up on 3rd Mainland Bridge at midnight. She asked me to take her to Ikoyi Cemetery. She told me." Emeka swallowed hard, his voice breaking. "She told me she needed to see her mother. That she'd been buried yesterday afternoon, but couldn't rest. She paid me for the fare and walked through the cemetery gates. Through them, not past them. Through solid iron." For a long moment, the guard said nothing. Then, slowly, he crossed himself. "Jesus Christ, have mercy. You believe me? My brother, I've worked at churches in Lagos for 35 years. I've heard things that would make your hair turn white. I've seen things that would make you question everything you think you know about this world." He leaned forward, his voice urgent. 3 people saw her yesterday at the funeral. Not just one person who could be mistaken, 3 separate witnesses. Emeka's breath caught. "Saw her." Said they saw her standing at the back of the church during the service, wearing the same white dress they'd just buried her in. One woman tried to approach her, thought maybe it was a cousin or sister who looked similar. But when she got close, Funmaleo smiled at her. That same sad smile people remembered from when she was alive, and simply vanished. Disappeared like smoke. "Dear God, there's more," the guard said, glancing around as if afraid of being overheard. The driver who transported her body to the cemetery, a professional, been doing it for 20 years. He swore he heard her voice in the hearse. Singing a lullaby her mother used to sing to her as a child. He almost crashed the hearse. He was so frightened. Emeka thought of her in his taxi. So still, so cold, so utterly present, yet utterly absent. "Her family," he said. "They know about these sightings?" "Her father does. He came to me after the funeral, in tears. Said he'd felt her presence during the service, felt her hand on his shoulder when he was crying. He's not a fanciful man. not someone who believes in superstitions. But he knows his daughter visited him one last time. What did you tell him? What could I tell him? That the church teaches us about eternal souls, about spirits that linger when there's unfinished business, that sometimes love is strong enough to break through death itself. The guard's eyes were wet. I told him that Funmaleo loved him very much, that she was saying goodbye, that he should find comfort in knowing her soul was finally at peace. Is it? Emeka asked. At peace. If you drove her to her mother's grave, if she made it there and said what she needed to say. The guard smiled gently. Then yes, I believe she's at peace now. Her funeral was her body's goodbye, but last night was her soul's goodbye. And you, my brother, you were the one chosen to help her complete that journey. Chosen. The word resonated through Emeka like a bell. He hadn't stopped for Funmaleo because he was brave or special. He'd stopped because he needed the money, because business was business. But what if it was more than that? What if, in the vast machinery of the universe, he'd been placed on that bridge at that moment for a reason? Emeka sat down on the curb, head in his hands, the morning sun warm on his back. The guard sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. They remained like that for several minutes, two men bound by their knowledge of the impossible, finding solace in shared understanding. What will you do now? The guard finally asked. I don't know. Go home. Hug my wife and son. Maybe stop driving at night for a while. Emeka laughed shakily. Definitely stop driving at night for a while. Wise. Lagos has enough mysteries in the daylight. No need to go looking for more in the darkness. The guard stood, groaning slightly as his old knees protested. But remember this. What happened to you? It's not a curse. It's a gift. You helped a lost soul find peace. There are worse things to be haunted by. Emeka stood as well, extending his hand. Thank you, sir, for believing me, for not thinking I'm crazy. In Lagos, the guard laughed. We're all a little crazy, brother. It's the only way to stay sane in this city. Emeka drove home slowly, carefully, seeing the city with new eyes. Every passenger on the street, every person waiting at a bus stop, were they all really alive? How many ghosts walked among the living, invisible to most, searching for closure or peace or forgiveness? The streets were crowded now, choked with morning traffic. Hawkers moved between cars selling everything from newspapers to phone chargers to roasted plantains. Bus conductors hung from Danfo doors, shouting destinations. A woman balanced a tower of bread on her head, navigating the chaos with practiced grace. Life. Everywhere life. Messy and loud and beautiful and real. And somewhere, invisible in the crowd, maybe the dead walked too, finishing their business before moving on to whatever came next. When Emeka reached his small flat in Surulere, his wife Folake met him at the door, worry creasing her face. She was a small woman with kind eyes and hands roughened by work, and Emeka had never been so grateful to see her. Emeka, where have you been? I've been calling all night. She grabbed his arm, pulling him inside. Your phone went straight to voicemail. I thought something terrible had happened. There was an accident on the bridge last night. I heard it on the radio, and I thought. He pulled her into a tight embrace, feeling the solid warmth of her, the reality of her. Her heart beat against his chest, steady and strong. She smelled of the coconut oil she used in her hair and the mild soap she preferred. Real. Alive. His. I'm sorry, my love. My phone died and I had a long night. He held her tighter. I love you. I need you to know that. I don't say it enough, but I love you more than I can express. She pulled back, studying his face with growing alarm. What happened? You look like you've aged 10 years. Emeka, you're scaring me. Are you sick? Did something happen? I'll tell you everything. But first, where's Tund? Still sleeping. It's only 7:30 a.m. School doesn't start until 9. She grabbed his face between her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. Emeka, please. You're frightening me. What's wrong? He went to his son's room and watched Tund sleep for a long moment, his chest rising and falling, very much alive. The boy was 8 years old, all gangly limbs and wild dreams, with Emeka's nose and Folake's stubborn chin. He slept with his mouth open, one arm thrown over his head, a textbook on mathematics still open beside his pillow. Emeka kissed his forehead gently, breathing in the sweaty, salty smell of child, and felt tears prick his eyes. Life was so fragile. One moment you were here, planning for tomorrow, and the next you were gone. leaving only grief and unfinished business behind. He returned to find Folake in the kitchen, making tea with shaking hands. She poured him a cup and sat across from him at their small table, waiting. And Emeka told her everything. He told her about the woman in white on the bridge, about the strange coldness in the car, about the way Funmaleo had known things she shouldn't know. He told her about the cemetery, about watching a ghost walk through iron gates, about the money that remained after the passenger had vanished. Folake listened without interrupting, her eyes growing wider with each detail. When he finished, he pulled out the money and placed it on the table between them. "This is real," he said. "Count it." She did, her hands trembling. 60,000 naira exactly. New bills, crisp and clean, impossible to dismiss as imagination or hallucination. "Emeka," she whispered, "what does this mean?" "It means the dead don't always rest easy. It means some things matter more than we realize. Forgiveness, closure, love. It means—" He took her hand, lacing his fingers through hers. "It means we shouldn't take a single day for granted. It means I need to tell you every day that I love you, that you and Tund are my whole world, that if I died tomorrow, I'd have no regrets about the life we've built together." Folake was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "You're really serious? This really happened? I swear on everything I hold sacred. On Tund's life, on our marriage, on my mother's grave. It happened exactly as I told you." She stood and came around the table, wrapping her arms around him from behind. "Then we'll get through this together. Whatever it means, whatever comes next, we'll face it together." And in that moment, Emeka understood why Funmaleo had been unable to rest. The bonds between people, love, guilt, forgiveness, grief, they were stronger than death itself. They were the threads that tied souls to the world, that kept ghosts walking among the living until those threads were finally cut or healed. He pulled his wife onto his lap, holding her close, and sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. He was alive. He was home. And he would never, ever take that for granted again. Outside, Lagos roared and lived and breathed, indifferent to one man's brush with the impossible. But inside that small flat in Surulere, a family held each other tighter, loved each other more fiercely, and understood, truly understood, that every moment was a gift. Over the following weeks, Emeka asked around discreetly. He found Funmaleo's father, Mr. Adebayo, at a mechanic shop in Ikeja, a broken man, still grieving his daughter. Emeka didn't tell him about the midnight ride. How could he? How could he tell a father that his daughter's ghost had been wandering Lagos, unable to rest? But he asked about Funmaleo's mother. Mr. Adebayo's eyes filled with tears at the question. "My wife, Alayinka," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "She had depression. We didn't understand it then. Mental illness, in our generation, it was seen as weakness or spiritual attack. We prayed over her, took her to pastors and herbalists, but we never took her to a proper doctor." "I'm sorry," Emeka said quietly. Funmaleo was only 24 when her mother jumped. She blamed herself, thought she should have seen the signs, should have insisted on medical treatment, should have saved her somehow. He wiped his eyes with a worn handkerchief. The guilt ate at her like a cancer. She threw herself into activism, trying to help others with mental health issues, but she couldn't forgive herself. The day before the accident, Emeka prompted gently, "What happened?" "She called me, said she'd had a breakthrough in therapy, said she finally understood that her mother's death wasn't her fault, that depression was an illness beyond anyone's control. She was going to visit her mother's grave that evening, said she was ready to let go of the guilt, to say a proper goodbye." His voice broke, but she never made it. Crashed on the same bridge where her mother had jumped. The police said she lost control, but I wonder if part of her wanted to be with her mother again. "Maybe she is now," Emeka said softly. Mr. Adebayo looked at him strangely. "What do you mean?" "Just that. Sometimes I think the people we love are never really gone. That they're still with us, in ways we don't always see." The old man nodded slowly. "After the funeral, I felt her. Felt Funmaleo's hand on my shoulder, just for a moment. People say it was grief, imagination. But I know my daughter's touch. She was there, saying goodbye." Mecca smiled. "I believe you, sir. I believe she was." They talked for a while longer, and when Emeka left, he felt lighter somehow. The circle was complete. Funmaleo had made her peace, had said her goodbyes, had finally been able to rest. And he, Emeka, had been part of that process, a small cog in the machinery of closure, but an essential one nonetheless. He never drove past the third mainland bridge at night again. He couldn't. The memory was too vivid, too real. But sometimes, on quiet evenings, he thought of Funmaleo in her white dress, standing beneath that flickering streetlight. He hoped she'd found her mother's grave. He hoped they'd made peace, wherever souls go to settle their accounts. He used the 60,000 naira for Tun's school fees, just as Funmaleo had suggested. And every night, he hugged his family a little tighter and told them he loved them. He called his own mother more often, visited his aging father on weekends, reconciled with a brother he'd been feuding with over some petty disagreement he could no longer even remember. Because the dead had taught him something the living often forget. Time is precious, forgiveness matters, and some journeys have to be completed, even after death. Retrice. Life has a way of reminding us what truly matters: family, love, and the moments we often take for granted. Emeka learned that even in the face of loss, hope, forgiveness, and gratitude can guide us. Thank you for watching this story. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss more fascinating African real stories from Ace and 5 Chronicles.